This is Jessie, and you're listening to the Curious Cabinet Podcast. Hey everyone. It's been a while since my last podcast, probably a couple of weeks. I don't know exactly how long. But, it's the holidays and everybody's catching up with everything and catching all the sicknesses, and it's just been a crazy time. So I'm back on track now, and I'm very excited to have this podcast out today. Today I am going to talk about Miss Mary Badarocco, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. If I don't, sorry, but that's how I believe it's pronounced. So, Mary Badaracco was born Mary Edna Passaro on August 11th, 1946. She was one of 12 kids, being number 10. And those closest to her knew her as Mary Pooh. She dropped out of Danbury High School in Connecticut at 16 years old and met her first husband. She had 2 kids with him, and they got divorced a few years later. Life wasn't really easy for Mary, but she made it work, and she loved her kids with all her heart. Over the years, she had moved several times and held multiple bartending jobs and house cleaning jobs just to make ends meet. She spent a lot of time outdoors and loved gardening. She loved animals, always played with anybody's dogs who was walking by her, or she was also known to feed deer by hand. In her spare time, she enjoyed drawing and painting. But in 1970, she met Dominic Badaracco at a bar he owned. He also owned a siding business, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think he owned a painting business too. Or he was connected in some way. Dominic had 4 children from a previous marriage. And he got married, and he and Mary got married shortly after they met. Their relationship wasn't great. Dominic was known to physically and mentally abuse her, and he cheated on her relentlessly. She had left multiple times and came back. Mary's daughter, Sherrie, said that Dominic never took the role of being the stepdad. Their mom was always trying to protect them from Dominic because he was physically abusive to the children as well. If he said not to do something, the kids didn't do it because they knew that something would happen if they didn't listen to him. So, if the children disobeyed him, they would get spanked with a paddle. This paddle had all the kids' names on it and check marks next to their names for each time that they were hit with the paddle. They were also hit with a belt at other times for things that weren't as big as the paddle hitting, I guess, which is just awful. Mary's other daughter, Beth, said, "We thought we were a whacked out version of the Brady Bunch. We almost never brought anyone into the house because we never knew what would happen. The first time I brought my husband to the house, Dominic ripped the phone out of the wall because his son was making a long-distance phone call." She also said that as soon as she got her first car, she would sleep in it to feel safe, which is that's so sad and terrifying that you have to grow up like that. Mary's daughters were obviously very scared of Dominic and moved out of the home as fast as they possibly could. They also remember how controlling Dominic had been with money. He would give Mary the exact dollar amount for whatever it was that they needed for the home, for bills, for gas, or anything. It was the exact dollar amount. In the summer of 1984, the family moved from Danbury to their home on Wakefield Hill Road in Sherman, Connecticut. Now, they didn't move in right away, but they lived there for about 6 months before Mary had went missing. At the time, Mary was 38. She had recently become a grandmother, and she was very close to her daughters. But this is when Mary's life really started to fall apart. Mary had found out Dominic was cheating again, and this was the final straw. The years of abuse she had endured from him, the pain of it all over and over again, cheating, the physical and mental abuse, she was ready to divorce him. A few weeks before she disappeared, she quit claim her right to the house, which I had to look it up. It was that she pretty much gave away the rights to the house to him for $1. Mary's daughter, Sherrie, had last heard from her on August 18th, 1984. She had invited her mom to go to Bridgewater County Fair, but her mom said that she had already made plans that night. She lovingly joked with Sherrie and told her that if there was anything cute there, to pick it up for her. On August 20th, Dominic, who was on August 20th, Donna, who was Dominic's daughter from his first marriage, so Sherrie and Beth's stepsister, called Sherrie and told her to come by the house. She thought it was kind of strange because why wasn't her mom calling her to invite her over? But whatever. It was just weird. So the next day, Sherrie decided to come by after work. The house was locked and no one was home, which another strange thing because it was dinner time and her mom was always home. She was cooking dinner. She also noticed that her mom's 1982 black Chevrolet Cavalier was parked in the driveway. The windshield had been smashed in on the driver's side, and there was glass on the seat, which she said it felt like it wasn't right, almost like it was staged. She waited around, and eventually Dominic showed up, and what he told her made no sense to her. Dominic said that he last saw Mary that morning on August 20th. He said that they talked about the divorce, and he was hoping that they could agree on an informal divorce settlement, and it included leaving him and the home and giving her $100,000 to $250,000. He said then she just packed up all her stuff, took the money, and left. But there has never been any sign of the money anywhere, and none of Mary's belongings have ever been found. And from some of the things I've read, he told her not to tell her sister or anyone, and that his lawyer would handle everything, which is a very strange thing to say. He asked Sherrie to come back later and to get the rest of Mary's belongings. When she came back to get them, and I couldn't find exactly what time frame it was, like when she came back, if it was the next day or whatever. But it was her wedding ring and the keys that were left on the kitchen counter. There were no pictures of her mom in any of the frames around the home that like she was normally in. Like she took all the pictures of herself out of the frames. That's weird, you know? There were no clothes, only some art supplies and empty perfume bottles. He had also given multiple versions of the story. One where there was that he was home when she left and one where he wasn't home when she left. But both versions said that the informal settlements were given. Settlements, sorry. But the whole thing felt strange because like the car, the whole like house thing almost seemed like it was staged because not even a random sock was left behind. Usually, you know, especially if you're packing stuff in a hurry, something's going to get left behind. It's almost like she never existed in the home at all. And like I've said before, none of Mary's belongings had ever been found. So her kids believed that they were either all burned or buried. So obviously, Sherrie didn't believe the story, but she gave her mom time, like maybe she thought she was upset and she needed some space. So she initially didn't report her missing because while she was skeptical of the story, she didn't have any reason to believe that something was wrong. It wasn't until Labor Day weekend that Beth had gotten a call from Donna. about Mary's disappearance, and that's when her and her sister reported her missing, which was 11 days after she had initially disappeared. Then, on August 28th, Dominic filed for divorce on grounds of abandonment, which was finalized of August of 1985, so it took a whole year to finalize it. But this was 2 days before she was reported missing. He said that she abandoned him, so he filed for divorce. And then 2 days later, his kids reported her missing. Because I don't think he could have done that if she had been reported missing. Beth and Sherrie became increasingly suspicious of Dominic. But he told the police the same story he told Sherrie. She took the money and ran. And really, there was no reason not to believe him. So because of that, they didn't do any initial investigating, which is just awful. So there was no evidence, no searching of the home, no investigating the car, which he did admit to smashing the windshield of her car, but then he refused to take a polygraph test. And then the car just magically disappeared and was never seen again. There's never been any public records of any sale either. So the car just disappeared. And then very shortly after, he began renting the home to a woman who he was dating. And after the divorce was official, he married that woman. So you can kind of see where this is all very, very strange. He married that woman after he started renting his house to her. That's weird. But okay, anyway. Sherrie had remembered the last dinner she had with her mom and how she knew that Dominic was cheating again and how she had found makeup on his clothes and how she was just done. She told her daughter that it was the last time he would ever cheat on her. Dominic then interrupted the dinner because they were eating at Mary's house, and Mary's demeanor changed. She was nervous, obviously scared, and then had asked Sherrie to leave, and that was the last time she ever saw her mom. Mary's daughters had to pressure the police to reconsider Dominic's story and then search for their mother. The police believed that she just walked away from her family, but her children obviously knew otherwise. In 1986, an ex-Hells Angels member who was in the Witness Protection Program came forward with information about the case. He said that there was a contract on Mary's life. The name of the person who issued that contract was never revealed, but everyone knew that Dominic's son Joe was part of Hell's Angels. Now, this man said that he hired Joe and another man to kill Mary. The reason had supposedly been that she had threatened to expose Dominic and all the criminal activity he had been doing for years. Dominic was already under scrutiny and decided that the best way to keep anyone from finding out was to silence Mary forever. But throughout the years, the Badaracco family has become known for their violence and troubles. In 1990, Joe Badaracco went to jail after firebombing a bar owned by one of Dominic's rivals. Dominic Jr. was also gunned down in 1997. I don't really know why, I couldn't find out, but it seems like the family was just involved in a ton of suspicious activity. While in prison, police had tried to interview Joe, but he refused. They did interview another man named Steve Kelly, who was an associate of Joe's. Well, they didn't interview him. They tried to, but he refused. But then he took a polygraph. They said he had failed when he claimed that he had never seen Mary and didn't know if any of the gang members had killed her. Steve had later died in a motorcycle accident, so the tip that he was involved was never confirmed and nothing ever came out of it. In 1990, Beth and Sherrie had convinced their state representative, Lynn Tabersack, I apologize if I pronounce that wrong, to reclassify their mom's case from a missing persons to a homicide. Now, this was a huge step because it changed everything. Now having it classified as a homicide, it helped gain more exposure. But the aftermath wasn't great for Lynn. She once had a brick thrown through her window. And Lynn's son was also in Dominic's son's softball league. And at one point, Dominic's son told Lynn's son that his mom should mind her own business. But Lynn didn't take any legal action towards anyone about the threats or the brick being thrown through her window. So then, as after it became classified as a homicide case, Western District Mayor Crime Squad Detective Joseph Bukowski took the case. And there was a $50,000 reward for any information leading to Mary's whereabouts. He was ready to make an arrest and made it known that Dominic was his lead suspect. In 1991, Mary was legally declared dead. Around that same time, Beth was trying to gain access to the government documents about this case. And then randomly, in 1993, they appeared in her mailbox, but all of the names had been blacked out. It's almost like the Epstein files. I cracked myself up. Anyway, fast forward to 2003, and a man named Lee Jr., who was a career criminal, was in Abe's bar in Danbury. He overheard a man named Ernest. Now, I'm going to butcher this, so let me just try to pronounce this. Dockenhausen. I love, strong German names like that. Dockenhausen. Anyway, he was saying that he had buried some cars for Dominic. And it's weird that this guy was just talking about him burying cars for Dominic. It kind of makes me think that somebody, maybe Dominic, had crossed him and ratted him out or something. Who knows? Because why would you start telling people about this stuff? But anyway, Ernest was an excavation contractor who worked for Dominic. Detective Bukowski had contacted him the following August, and Ernest initially denied burying the cars, but eventually admitted burying 3 or 4 on a property he owned in Newtown. He did this just around the same time that Mary went missing. He told the police they were wasting their time, but police seemed to think differently. So they got search warrants for the property in Newtown and another property in Fairfield, and they began to dig. During the search, Ernest did admit to knowing Dominic, but denied he knew anything about Mary's disappearance. They found a couple of cars, including one blue Cavalier, but Mary's had been black, and police confirmed that it was not the same car. It ended up costing police $35,000, and unfortunately, they found nothing. But, I wonder if they got him on other charges, because why is this man burying cars for Dominic? I didn't even know that was a thing. If you're burying vehicles, that means something is, insurance fraud or something. There's no reason to just bury a car. It's so weird. But anyway, in 2008, Ernest was charged with misdemeanor for interfering in the investigation in Mary's case. Police claim that he had given them false information about the location of the cars during the investigation, in hopes that a conviction would pressure him into giving up more information. But he was acquitted in 2009. In February of 2009, Comcast Cable had teamed up with state police in an attempt to solve cold cases in Connecticut. They featured Mary's case on a show called Police Blotter on Demand, and a billboard was put up in an attempt to gain any tips about Mary's case. So in 2010, there was an investigative grand jury, and they did it in order to build a murder case against Dominic. In Connecticut, grand jury proceedings are held in secret, so really nothing was made public about what happened. But what we do know is that there was an assumption that some political corruption had interfered with the case, and about 63 people had been subpoenaed. There wasn't any credible information that was found during the subpoenas. So then, there's like so much that goes on with this. So then, a judge who worked in the building where the grand jury probe was being held, Judge Robert Brunetti was his name. He grew up with a man named Ronald Rocky Richer. This man was a longtime business partner of Dominic, and all three had even hung out together, went golfing together. The judge had even represented their siding business in legal proceedings before. But the judge said that he hadn't seen Dominic in about 5 years before this happened. So, this judge apparently solicited and shared information about the grand jury probe with Rocky. Rocky had asked the judge if he knew anything about a grand jury probe into Mary's case at the time. And at that time, there wasn't anything, so he told Rocky no. But then, when he found out one was happening, he told Rocky, who obviously passed along information to Dominic, which is, I mean, you can't really do that, right? Like, that's illegal? Crazy. Anyway, so then there was a bribery trial. During this trial, Judge Brunetti admitted to his mistakes, then miraculously retired shortly after with a full pension. Oh, no way. It's like, oh God, it's so awful. The Judicial Review Council began investigating the whole thing independently, but ultimately decided not to discipline him. They said they waited too long to pursue the investigation, and there was too much time to charge him with anything. It's so ridiculous. Some people just get away with things. It's amazing. Anyway, okay, so in June of 2013, Dominic was charged with bribery. After Rocky had told Dominic about the grand jury probe, he had called the judge and offered him over $100,000 to interfere with the grand jury probe regarding Mary's disappearance. He said Dominic called him and said, "I'll only say this once. It's worth 100 G's. Judge Brunetti said that he was speechless and hung up the phone. Yet he took weeks to report what happened. Once he did, they got Dominic to agree to meet up with the judge in person while the judge wore a wire. But at the last minute, Dominic canceled. For evidence, the prosecution showed that Dominic had closed an IRA account in November of 2010 that held just over $120,000 in it, just 2 days before he offered the judge the bribe. Very coincidental, if you ask me. But Dominic was sentenced to 7 years in prison, only serving half of his sentence and getting out when he was 79. This is the only time anything has ever been charged in association with Mary's case or Mary's disappearance. So, during the grand jury probe, Dominic's wife Joan and Rocky were both suspected of perjury while taking the stand. And Mary's daughters were told that some sort of legal action would come out of this, but nothing ever did. They felt that they needed something to happen, so they contacted attorney Michelle Cruz, who was a victim advocate at the time. She started an investigation and tried to unseal some of the records from the grand jury probe. The presiding judge asked Michelle, "Is there any reason you believe the public can't rely on the state's attorney?" To which Michelle replied, "It's clear in the warrant that there were 2 others involved in the alleged bribery that were not arrested." But apparently the judge was not a fan of this, and all of her attempts to unseal those files were denied. She was then fired from her victim advocate position because she had an antagonistic and combative behavior, which I think is what you're supposed to have if you're an advocate for a victim. But anyway, Michelle runs her own private firm now. In 2012, there was a search of the home Mary shared with Dominic, which is, I mean, how many years too late? But there was obviously no evidence discovered. So I guess they searched the yard and stuff too to see if anything was buried, but nothing was there. I'm sure this guy doesn't seem like he was stupid enough to leave things behind. So I would assume he moved it once he was getting investigated about it. So it's been said that Dominic has had connections. Obviously, the judge was one, but that kind of screwed him a little bit. But, I mean, if Mary left with a ton of money, why would she leave her car behind? She would have to have someone come and pick her up with a bunch of money. And the whole thing is just, it seems so far-fetched. So, a Reddit user commented on a thread where I had gotten some information from. There was a lot of comments because people have really gone into like this case because it's just crazy. So this comment says, I know this is a late comment. It was commented about 3 years ago, and the thread was posted about 9 years ago. And this person said, being from Danbury and knowing Badaracco literally all my life, there is no way he didn't have Mary killed. It was before my time when she went missing. My dad grew up with Dominic Jr. I even remember going to his funeral as a kid. My dad used to tell me stories of Mary and how she was tough and kind. She was one of my dad's favorite people. He said how she loved all the kids, even Joseph and Dominic Jr. like her own. So when she didn't show up at Dominic's funeral, my dad said that, to him, she was definitely killed. He said no one would probably ever cross Dominic Sr. because they were too scared. I remember him telling me about how one of Mary's kids, I don't know which one, came up and accused him of being in on it and probably helped kill Mary. He argued with her a bit about how he'd never, but she wouldn't listen. I know my dad always wanted to see Badaracco get caught and put in prison for it. My father told me about Dominic going to prison for bribery in 2012 or 2013, I can't remember. But my father passed before he got out. I think about this case and everything every couple of months, and I check to see if he is even still alive. I think about some of the stories he told me about Dominic and Mary. He always told me how sad it was that a person as nice as Mary had to get caught up with Dominic. Sorry to fill the comment thread like this. I figured I would share some of these stories from my dad. There have been numerous vigils for Mary over the years, and a song had even been written by her. I don't know if you remember those little critter books, like the kids' books by Mercer Mayer. But her daughter, Jessie, became a singer and actually wrote a song about Mary's disappearance. Sadly, Jessie died in a car accident. The governor at the time, William O'Neill, had posted a $20,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of Mary's killer, and has even accumulated to $50,000, but no one has ever been able to claim it because there's been no signs of Mary since. Mary's daughters have fought tirelessly to figure out what happened and to bring their mother home. They've spent hours contacting lawyers, searching themselves, and even working with psychics to try and find her. Beth has said, the truth about my mother is going to come out one day. It's just a matter of time. And Sherrie has said, we knew something happened to her. I know my mother, there's no way she would just leave. And she just didn't drive away and never come back. Nobody believed that. The police obviously didn't believe it, or they wouldn't be doing what they're doing now. In 2010, the grand jury ended without charges, but officially stated that Mary had died in August of 1984. So how is it possible that nothing has been done? In Connecticut, the law allows for something called an A1 judge grand jury, which would which would allow them to investigate a cold case behind closed doors without any outside interruptions. But to do so, the state's attorney must believe that a crime occurred and that traditional investigative methods have reached their limits, which, from my point of view, it obviously seemed like there was a crime occurred. They all agree that Mary died. But in a court of law, I'm not exactly sure what evidence they would need to prove it or to be able to do this kind of, grand jury opening of the case. But I believe it's a possibility to get the case investigated like this. It should be, because it's very, very apparent that Dominic had something to do with this. And I'm really hoping one day that Sherrie and Beth get justice for their mom. They have fought so hard, and watching their mom deal with all the physical and mental abuse growing up, And then just not knowing what happened to her is just, it has to be such an ache in their hearts. I hope things come to light for them one day. But that's all for today. Thanks for checking out this episode. And I should be doing one next week, but please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Like this podcast, find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Until next week, guys.